pristhaya bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunnavadi Paschatya Desha Tarine His heart is never cold, so peaceful and poetic, with a message true and bold. He's never seeking praise, so silent and so brave. The transcendental world is in the magic of his ways. When I see his love, I know got a long, long way to go. When I taste the love that he's feeling inside.
Srila Prabhupada.
He's always meek and mild, with a warm and friendly smile, so simple in his living, his singing all the while. He gives us Krishna's name, his glory and his fame, to serve his Lord and Master in pleasure or in pain. When I see his love, I know got a long, long way to go. When I taste the love that he's feeling inside.
Srila
To live, and living tries to give the happiness that's found in the sound of Krishna's name. He's free of lust and greed, with the heart so pure and clean. He's the lover of the Lord, and his life is ecstasy. When I see his love, I know got a long, long way to go. When I take the love that he is
नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदांत स्वामिन इति नामिने नमस्ते सारस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेषा शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देश तारिणे जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंदा हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे. Hare Krishna. A very warm welcome to all of you on day 18 of Srila Prabhupada Lila. Now we will understand another significant phase of the movement. Srila Prabhupada establishing a solid footing of Krishna consciousness movement in the West. Once when he was having darshan of Sri Rukmani Dwarkadhish in Los Angeles, and this is very, very confidential pastime. Srila Prabhupada explained to one of his intimate disciples that I was talking to Rukmani Dwarkadhish, and they told me, you go and you develop preaching in India. Prabhupada's understanding was India is meant for my god brothers there. Anyway, there many temples are there. I will preach in the West. But then Rukmani Dwarkadhish told, no, you go to India and you preach. So Prabhupada tells the deities, but I want to develop this place. This is a nice place we have got here. Then Prabhupada they told me, you go there and we will give you a better place than even here in Los Angeles. And thus the beautiful temple of Vrindavan and other centers came up. So thus these are very confidential pastimes. Only devotees who are faithful, who are advanced can understand it. But otherwise also, it is so evident that other devotees also can at times appreciate. Like once a new devotee was cleaning the plates, we offer Rajbhog, means it is very opulent dish, food items which is offered to Krishna, that is called Rajbhog. So that is served to Krishna in special plates, and those plates are supposed to be washed by assistant pujari. And then Prabhupada called the local leaders, authorities of the temple, and he told, just see which person is washing the plates. He is not cleaning it properly. And Prabhupada has not seen the plates, has not seen how the offering is happening. And then the temple authorities actually went and they found out that the plate was not cleaned properly. So in this way, Prabhupada was directly able to converse with the deities, and Prabhupada told, this is why the deities have come here. Krishna has incarnated in the form of deity in the temple, Archavtar, because they are very eager to speak to the devotees. So we just have to build our eagerness. They are here just to reciprocate. And Prabhupada, being a pure devotee of Krishna, was able to have such reciprocation. And thus, Rukmani Dwarkadhish ordered Prabhupada, please come to India. And Prabhupada then started planning his activities in India. And how Srila Prabhupada develops, let us try to understand. So this is March 1971, Calcutta. It was midnight. Srila Prabhupada sat on a pillow behind his low desk. His light, the only one in the building. All other devotees were in bed. On the desk before him rested the dictating machine and a volume of Srimad Bhagavatam with Bengali commentary. A small frame picture of his spiritual master, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati, sat between two small vases of roses and asters. On the floor beyond the desk was the broad mat covered with white cotton fabric, where a few hours before devotees and guests had sat. But now he was alone. So all these detailed descriptions are very nice. They are helping us to meditate upon Prabhupada even more in a very detailed form. And meditation upon spiritual master and Krishna is the perfection of one's life. All one's spiritual desires are fulfilled by such meditation. So when we see Prabhupada is sitting on his desk on a pillow and there are white sheets over mats on which guests and devotees had sat few hours before. And then Srila Prabhupada's spiritual master's picture is there in between vases of rose and asters. And then there is only one light glowing in the entire building, that is of Srila Prabhupada's room. In this way, we can imagine and meditate Srila Prabhupada's pastimes. But now he was alone. Although usually he retired at 10, rising 3 or 4 hours later to translate, tonight he had not rested. It's midnight and Prabhupada had not gone to rest. And his Bhagavatam lay closed, his dictating machine covered. So what he's doing? He's sitting behind Bhagavatam and he's supposed to write books if at all he is up at night. But he's not dictating, he's not doing the translation work, but he's simply sitting and not able to sleep. What is the reason? He had sent 2 of his disciples, Tamal Krishna and Bali Mardan, to purchase land in Mayapur. 6 days had passed, however, and still they had neither returned nor sent word. He had told them not to return until they had completed the transaction, but 6 days were more than enough time. He was anxious, thinking constantly of his 2 disciples. So it was 6 days that Srila Prabhupada had sent 2 of his disciples, Tamal Krishna Maharaj and Balivardhan Prabhu, to purchase the land in Mayapur. And they were supposed to come back by this time, but they had not come. So thus he is constantly thinking of his disciples in anxiety. What will happen? Why were Tamal Krishna and Bali Mardan taking so long? It had been more than just a wait of 6 days. He had been trying to obtain land in Mayapur for years, and this time the prospects had been excellent. He had clearly instructed Tamal Krishna and Bali Mardan, and now they should have returned. The delay could mean a complication or even danger. Lord Chaitanya very beautifully explained that all the living entities, directly, indirectly, are engaged in service of Krishna. The obedient souls are engaged in direct devotional service to Krishna. Other souls also have to obey Krishna by taking shelter of Durga Devi and putting themselves under stringent laws of material nature. Everyone has to follow. But devotional service means a life of pleasant experience when a devotee voluntarily tries to render service to Krishna. And there are various kinds of service to Krishna as there are varieties of devotees. Everyone likes to serve Krishna in a particular mellow. We all have a unique relationship with Krishna and want to serve Krishna in that way. But still, which is the highest form of worship of Krishna? So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu explained, the best service which gives Krishna maximum pleasure is that of the gopis of Vrindavan. Ramya kachit upasana vrajavadhu vargenaya kalpita. Ramya kachit upasana. Upasana means worship. Usually we think worship means the deity worship, simple procedure, offering lamps, incense, flowers, whisk, chamar, all these things to Krishna. But actually upasana is done through various ways. That is obviously one kind of upasana when you offer various paraphernalia. A person who is reading Bhagavad Gita or Bhagavatam, the message of Krishna, he is worshipping Krishna by his intelligence. And the highest form of worship of Krishna, Ramya Kachit Upasana, is Rajvadhu Vargenaya Kalpita, demonstrated by the gopis of Vrindavan. What was the way the gopis were worshipping Krishna? So this worship is very important for the beginners. It does not mean we neglect this deity worship and try to imitate. No, it begins with this platform, deity worship. But then a person rises to a spontaneous platform. And then the gopis, when they notice Krishna has left for tending cows and he has gone barefoot, and Krishna's soles are so soft, they tell we are hesitant to put them even on our breasts. And like that, Krishna has gone to Vrindavan and there are so many pebbles on the road, in the forest, so many thorns could be there. and those pebbles and thorns may prick Krishna's feet. And this thing is giving them so much of anxiety thinking of this, that how much trouble would be coming to Krishna's lotus feet, that they faint. They literally faint. So one may imagine, how is it possible? No, this is possible when a person is situated in love of Krishna, the highest stage of spiritual life. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu fainted simply by seeing Lord Jagannath when he entered the temple of Jagannath. And everybody got worried. They thought young sannyasi is dead and gone. And there was no pulse and nothing. But Sarvam Bhattacharya, the head priest, being intelligent man, he took some cotton swabs and put it under the nostrils of Mahaprabhu. And then he noticed no air was passing, so he is not dead. He took Lord Chaitanya to his house, and then eventually, by hearing Hare Krishna Mahamantra, he got awakened to external consciousness. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu fainted. In a similar fashion, gopis also would faint simply thinking of Krishna, how Krishna's feet would be getting hurt walking on pebbles in the forests. So the whole world is into anxiety, taking anxiety for themselves in vain search of happiness in this material world, and giving anxiety to Krishna also. How somebody can give anxiety to Krishna? Krishna is supreme power. Yes, Krishna per se has no anxiety, but Krishna also becomes anxious because we, part and parcels of Krishna, are creating troubles for our life. So thus, Srila Prabhupada told, you should work very hard to relieve Chaitanya Mahaprabhu of his anxiety. So one who works in such a fashion to relieve Mahaprabhu of his anxiety, he becomes very dear to Lord Chaitanya and all his unlimited followers who bestow unlimited blessings upon such a sincere soul. So the whole world is giving anxiety to Krishna. Just like parents take anxiety when the child indulges in play entire day, does not study, they become anxious. What will happen to him? And the child is not at all worried. Child is thinking parents are unnecessary cruel, unnecessary harsh. They don't want me to play. But the parents who are in knowledge, they know that this child is spoiling his life. In a similar fashion, Krishna does not force us, but he sees these foolish people, living entities, as Prabhupada was explaining to the Africans. Yesterday we heard, the whole world is either hankering or lamenting. Only these things happen in this material world. When you don't have, you hanker, and eventually you have to leave this place or things will leave you, you lament. So when Krishna sees that the living entities are trying to indulge in material pleasures and thus creating unlimited bodies, thus more births and deaths and so many anxieties, bodily concept of life, and then taking so much stress and unnecessary trouble for maintaining artificial name, fame in a temporary drama which we have here, Krishna becomes very anxious. How my living entities are creating so many troubles, and then in such a pursuit of happiness which living entities never get, they break the laws of nature, want to enjoy unlimitedly without following the codes of religion, and thus they are sent to hellish situation, hell, where so much more punishment is there. So this is always giving anxiety to Krishna. And thus Krishna incarnates here, or he sends his messengers so that the living entities can be delivered. So the person who gives maximum pleasure to Krishna is not the one who gives anxiety to Krishna, but who takes anxiety for Krishna. And thus the gopis would take so much anxiety for Krishna that they would faint. And we see Srila Prabhupada also here, he is not sleeping at night, so much anxiety is there. And Prabhupada is not having physically good health. 3 heart strokes have come and other complications are there. Such a big movement he has to take care. Morning routine is fixed and everything, but Prabhupada is not able to sleep. And Prabhupada would tell many times at night, I'm not able to sleep just because I'm planning how to expand this worldwide Krishna consciousness movement. So this is how Krishna's service has to be done. When disciples ask Prabhupada, how can we please Krishna? Or how can we please you? Prabhupada would tell, by taking anxiety for Krishna, when you become anxious to serve Krishna. So if we don't take anxiety for Krishna, then anxiety will capture us in the material world. But of course, it should be regulated. We should not imitate Prabhupada, then we'll come in the mode of passion and it can harm our spiritual life. So as much anxiety as it is possible for our current spiritual status. That is why regulation is very much important. We should, I repeat, never do this thing like Prabhupada staying up all night and taking anxiety for preaching Krishna consciousness. We should be very, very strict, sleep on time, get up on time, and then take balanced anxiety during the day. Not that everything gets disturbed at times. So of course, some emergencies could be there sometimes, but usually we should have a very, very regulated life. But we can obviously, and we should aspire for a day when the day will come when I can also take unlimited anxiety for Krishna and preaching Krishna consciousness like Prabhupada did. He's so much anxious, having sleepless nights many times. But that is very advanced, that is liberated platform. Then we can take unlimited anxiety. Like gopis are taking anxiety, Prabhupada is taking anxiety. But anxiety is important. And this anxiety begins with deity worship. Deity worship means you have to be very punctual. Oh, it is time to wake the deities up. So I have to get up, leave my bed. Oh, it is time to do the offering. We are getting late. Even 1 minute delay is not allowed. We should be very, very particular. So let me do it. Oh, it's time to offer arti to the deities. We are getting late. So in this way, we get trained to take anxiety for Krishna. Ultimately, entire bhakti yoga is to develop relationship with Krishna. So in this way, deity worship helps us to start taking some anxiety. Oh, some offense is not happening. Oh, the flowers are old. Oh, cooking I have to do very carefully because Krishna will taste it. In this way, devotee is anxious. And then the real anxiety comes when a devotee enters into preaching field. And then a devotee is able to please Krishna. So we should not give anxiety to Krishna by unnecessarily indulging in material life and having material demands. But we should try to take anxiety for Krishna in small steps, bits and pieces. That is the way of satisfying Krishna, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and our spiritual master. The delay could mean complication or even danger. And thus we see, by such anxiety, what happens? These disciples also have taken anxiety. And by this, they have got such an enormous blessing that the spiritual master, as Prabhupada said, wrapped in thought, the only sounds were the usual sounds of the night. Prabhupada is sitting wrapped in thought of his disciples. So we are supposed to meditate upon Prabhupada and Krishna, but here we see Prabhupada is meditating on his disciples with rapt attention. So what is the fortune of such disciples? So Prabhupada told this is real association. When you are engaged in my preaching mission, you are constantly thinking of me because you are in anxiety. So you have to pray to spiritual master, you have to think of spiritual master. And spiritual master also, because you have taken such great responsibility, is thinking of you. So this is real association with the spiritual master. So somehow or the other, we should try to attract the attention of Krishna and spiritual master. Then life is successful. As Prabhupada sat wrapped in thought, the only sounds were the usual sounds of the night, mice within the walls, a brahmachari snoring on the veranda, and in the distance, the night watchman making his rounds, his stick striking the street. There were no cars, and only an occasional wooden rickshaw clattered along the potholed street. Prabhupada wondered if perhaps his boys had been robbed. Before sending them off, he had shown Tamal Krishna how to carry money around his waist in a makeshift cloth money belt. But it had been a great deal of money, and robberies were not uncommon around Navadvip. Or perhaps there had been some other delay. Sometimes in land negotiations involving large sums of money, the court would require that a clerk record the denomination and serial number of every note exchanged. Or perhaps the train had broken down. Suddenly Prabhupada heard footsteps on the stairs. Someone opened the door and now walked along the veranda just outside. A soft knock. Yes, who is it? Prabhupada asks. Tamal Krishna entered and prostrated himself before Srila Prabhupada. So, what is your news? Tamal Krishna looked up triumphantly. The land is yours. Prabhupada leaned back with a sigh. All right, he said. Now you can take rest. So then after 5 months securing the land, which was a big triumph, a huge land, and Prabhupada had a dream place for Krishna to be established over there. Soon after that, Prabhupada is making arrangement for the cornerstone laying ceremony. And Prabhupada in August had traveled to London, 1971. And through the High Commission officer, he requested that you can please tell Indira Gandhi, who was the Prime Minister of nation at that time, that she can come as chief guest for cornerstone laying ceremony. and he told all his governing body members, secretaries, to please come for the ceremony. And he requested the Indian disciples, if Prime Minister is not able to come, at least get the governor for the purpose. It was very, very important, significant event. To the devotees who heard Prabhupada's plans, this seemed the most ambitious ISKCON project ever. While taking his morning walks in Russell Square, Prabhupada would point to various buildings and ask how tall is the building. Finally, he announced one morning that the main temple in Mayapur should be more than 300 feet high. There is no temple like that, 300 feet high. Mayapur's monsoon floods and sandy soil would create unique difficulties, he said, and the building would have to be built on a special foundation, a sort of floating raft. A civil engineer later confirmed this. The main building, the colossal Mayapur Chandrodaya Mandir, was to be no less than 300 feet high and costing perhaps tens of millions of dollars. Prabhupada's description astounded the architects as well as the devotees. Such a building is rare to be found in the world even. It sounded grander than the United States Capitol or St. Peter's Cathedral. The temple's central dome would house a three-dimensional model of the universe. The design, however, would be based on the Vedic description and would depict not only the material universe but also the spiritual one. Entering the main hall, a person would look up and see the planets situated just as Srimad Bhagavatam describes 14 planetary systems. Beginning with the hellish planets, then the middle planets where the earth is situated, then heavenly planets of demigods, and then Brahmaloka, the highest planet in the material world. Above Brahmaloka, the observer would see the abode of Lord Shiva, and beyond that, Brahmajyoti and the spiritual planets. So, Bhagavatam describes very beautifully the planetary system. Some people classify in 3 bands, others classify in 14 bands. So, these are various layers. On each layer, there are many, many planetary systems. Bhuloka, Bhuvarloka, Om Bhur Bhuva Swaha as we chant. So, now we are living on Bhuloka, earthly planets. On this level, the planets are predominantly made up of earth. Then above this is different level, fiery planets, sun belongs to that, Bhur, Bhuva, and then Swargloka, heavenly planets. And above that, Maharloka, Janaloka, Tapaloka, Satyaloka. These 4 planetary systems are specially meant for spiritualists. Sometimes people go to heavenly planets to enjoy material luxuries, but others they go for spiritual life. So those who dedicate themselves completely for spiritual purpose, they go to these higher planets. And thus, anybody who is following spiritual life, there should be no disturbance to such a person. So at the end of Brahma's day, other 10 planets where material enjoyment, this sense is prevailing, predominant, they get destroyed. But the 4 planets remain undisturbed. So the devotees continue practicing their spiritual life over there, and at the end of Brahma's lifetime, when the universe is said to be destroyed, so such personalities get liberated. So such is a description mentioned in Srimad Bhagavatam, and Prabhupada wanted to give exact understanding of the universe to anybody who enters. A 3D model will be visible in the huge 300 feet high temple dome inside. Above Brahmaloka, the observer would see the abode of Lord Shiva, and above that, the spiritual sky or Brahmajyoti. Within the spiritual effulgence of Brahmajyoti would be the self-illuminating Vaikuntha planets, inhabited by eternally liberated souls, and highest of all would be the supreme planet Krishnaloka, where God in his original eternal form enjoys his pastimes with his most confidential devotees. And why such a fabulous architectural wonder as this in such an obscure part of the world was planned by Prabhupada? The answer Prabhupada explained. So Mayapur, even now if you go, it is not very developed apart from the ISKCON center. So why Prabhupada is planning such an obscure, it's almost field, jungle at that time. So why Prabhupada is planning such thing here? It's an obscure part. Prabhupada explained, no. Mayapur was actually not obscure. It seemed so only from the mundane perspective. To mundane vision, that which was central seemed remote. The soul and the next life seemed remote, while the body and immediate sense gratification seemed central. So, this is the stark contrast between material and spiritual life, as it is mentioned in Bhagavad Gita also. Ya nisha sarva bhutani tasyam jagrati sanyami. The night for materialist is daytime for spiritualist, and vice versa. So, for a materialist, spirit soul, planning for next life, it is something very remote, least important, invisible. And sense enjoyment is central to their life. Whereas for a spiritualist, the next life, eternal life, preparing oneself for future life is central theme. And sense gratification is remote, he keeps it far away. So thus, many times materialists they tell, and there were many court cases also in America of brainwashing on the Hare Krishna movement, that these people are brainwashing. It's a cult, mentally concocted this thing. But then, fortunately, the judges were very wise. They went through the books and they understood that it is a thing which has been followed in India for a long time. It is nothing new. Bhagavad Gita is a very old book, centuries old tradition, and people in India follow it regularly. So it's not a cult, but a bona fide religion. And people in the West now, they are reaping the results of this bona fide religion. So thus they removed all such charges. But otherwise, for a materialist, it is a brainwash. People don't understand what has suddenly happened to him or her. And she was going to movies, she was enjoying like that, but suddenly she is just chanting entire day. What has happened? She is fasting and doing all such things, living such an austere life. It is a brainwash. So it's not a brainwash. It is actually shift of perspective. What is daytime for spiritualist is nighttime for materialist. So for us, materialists are brainwashed, not understanding the basic things, how they are simply creating troubles in their life, not worrying about eternal life. And for them, spiritualists appear to be brainwashed. So it was not obscure. Mayapur was the central in the entire universe. It was the most important place. And Prabhupada wanted to bring it into limelight, even in the vision of materialists. By establishing the temple of human understanding in Mayapur, Srila Prabhupada would be directing the materialistic world's attention back to the true center. Any sincere visitor would be charmed by the beauty of Mayapur project and would perceive that here indeed was the spiritual world. And the devotees living in Mayapur, by remaining constantly immersed in singing Hare Krishna Kirtan and discussing the philosophy of Krishna consciousness, would be able to convince any intelligent visitor that the teachings of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu were the highest truth. The devotees would explain the philosophy of absolute truth, which would enable visitors to comprehend actual spiritual truth beyond sectarian religious dogma. Furthermore, the continuous Hare Krishna Kirtan and blissful devotees engaged in a wide variety of services to Lord Krishna would demonstrate that Bhakti Yoga was the simplest, most direct process for meditating on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. While staying in ISKCON's Mayapur city, a person would quickly become a devotee of the Lord and begin chanting and dancing in ecstasy. So this anybody can notice. When the devotees go, they see how these foreigners, they are living such a simple life, riding on a bicycle, and the child is sitting on the carrier backside, and very simple life. The children are studying in Gurukul. There is no electricity over there. They wake up, they sleep by 7:30 in the evening or 8 o'clock, wake up 2:30 in the morning, small kids. And they will do their Mangala Aarti, do all the pujas very nicely, take cold water bath, no machines over there at all. And then they would go for various services, they would study the Vedas, and they are so happy and glad. And thus the devotees having such a simple life, coming for sadhana, preaching, doing sankirtan, discussing Krishna consciousness, they are so blissful. Then people would think, what society we have created? Horrible noises and 10 to 12 hours of job every day, and in family but no association with the family, and so many other desires pulling us in all the moral and immoral ways, and always ever increasing so many anxieties and problems. So this is life, people living in village and serving Krishna. So this would be a direct proof. People from the richest countries are living here and having such a simple village life. So this was purpose of Prabhupada. And Prabhupada also told how they would be able to convince other people, because They are always chanting Hare Krishna and they would be discussing Krishna conscious philosophy. So thus, if we want to preach and be able to convince others, we should try to cultivate spiritual potency by always singing and chanting Hare Krishna and always discussing this Krishna conscious philosophy with each other, rather than discussing the so-called mundane affairs of this world. Unless it is very important for our vocational duties, job, business, education, we should try to discuss Bhagavatam and Krishna consciousness. So Prabhupada will discuss, threadbare you should discuss, there should be no doubt, very clearly you should be convinced with the philosophy. Always keep on discussing Bhagavatam and keep on doing Kirtan. That will make us very strong in Krishna consciousness. Srila Prabhupada was demonstrating how the world could be spiritualized by linking material things with the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna through Bhakti Yoga. And why shouldn't such spiritual feats surpass the achievements of the materialists? Because we are doing under the direct potency of Krishna. Srila Prabhupada was back in India touring and preaching with his disciples. After a successful 10-day Pandal festival in New Delhi, several 100,000 had attended, he decided to take his disciples on a short excursion to Vrindavan. Although Prabhupada had had many programs in Indore, in Hyderabad, in Allahabad, and Banaras, and so many other places, but he did not have a chance to visit Vrindavan. But now, because he was in Delhi, it was a very nice opportunity. Just a couple of hours of ride, and all these devotees would be able to see the center of the universe, where whenever Lord Krishna enters this universe, he becomes visible in that place, Vrindavan. Prabhupada had come to Vrindavan for more than just a pilgrimage. So although he wanted to show the disciples, that was the intent, but there was another very important reason. And what was the reasons? The reason was to found an American house in Vrindavan, where the disciples would get trained in Krishna consciousness. And when they get trained, they get spiritually potent, they can go and take this message across the world. When Prabhupada had fallen little sick, he was recuperating. That time also he was trying to find land, but he could not find anything promising. And that time he was hardly known to anybody, just an year of preaching, just a handful of disciples who were cultivated for maybe 2-3 months in personal contact with Prabhupada. But now Prabhupada was an ambassador of the Vedic culture across the world. And everybody, the mayor of the town would come to see Prabhupada in the airport. And the entire town would gather. Hundreds and thousands of people heard Prabhupada in Pandal program in Delhi. So now when he was entering Vrindavan, he was known as ambassador of Vedic culture. This time, however, he was coming to Vrindavan as that city's famous ambassador to the world, renowned for propagating the glories of Radha, Krishna and Vrindavan in the West. The success of the Hare Krishna movement was being widely publicized in India, as Prabhupada and his band of foreign disciples traveled from city to city holding kirtans, lecturing from Srimad Bhagavatam and telling of Krishna consciousness in the West. So when Prabhupada arrived in Vrindavan with 40 disciples, the entire town heralded his presence. So eventually, Mr. S, one devotee, he was having a land in Raman Reti. They were also devotees and they wanted to have a Radha Krishna temple there. So although this land was in a place which was a forest, Raman Reti was the place where Krishna Balram would come and play. Raman means to enjoy, Reti means in the sand. So they would come with their cows and then play in the sands, and it was still a forest. Although there was a Chatikara road adjoining the land, which was the road, it was even busy at that time. And if you have to go to Taj Mahal, to Agra, then you have to cross that road. But the land was kind of isolated. It was now, of course, if you go to the temple, that is in the heart of Vrindavan, but earlier it was very, very isolated. And the disciples were thinking, who would come to this place? The main Vrindavan was around the 7 temples established by Goswamis. But still Prabhupada was able to see the future and he understood this is very nice land. So even though it was just a jungle and surrounded by so many fields and few ashramas here and there, but Prabhupada nevertheless, he wanted to have this land. And when Prabhupada promised that I will make a temple, the donors were very, very happy. and there was a verbal agreement that we will give you the land. When Srila Prabhupada assured Mr. S he would do so, Mr. S vowed that the land was now Prabhupada's. Prabhupada had heard such promises before and they had often proved false. But considering this serious offer, he appointed disciples to remain in Vrindavan to draw up a deed with Mr. S. From 1965 until 1970, Prabhupada had concentrated mainly on establishing Krishna consciousness in America. His plan had been that if Americans turned Krishna conscious, the rest of the world would follow. Although his preaching to the English-speaking people had begun in India, some 60 years of single-handed endeavor there had convinced him that Indians were either too absorbed in politics. So 60 years Prabhupada was here and he was, of course, planning his best preaching, trying to go abroad, but meanwhile in India also he was trying to preach, but then he was not successful. The reasons Prabhupada fathomed were either they were too absorbed in politics, too ignorant of their spiritual heritage, or too crippled by poverty to seriously accept Krishna consciousness. Prabhupada explained, Daridra dosha guna rashi nasha. If anybody, there are so many doshas in one's kundali, but if there is Daridra dosha, means the dosh or fault, as soon as a person takes birth, he has some good things, as per the horoscope, as per the activities of previous life, good events are going to happen and bad events are also there. So if he has got this bad arrangement of poverty in one's life, then Guna Rashi Nasho, Prabhupada explains. You may have so many qualities and all the constellations could be very nice for other things. But if you have this fault of poverty in your life, then all the qualities are of no use. If a person is poor, nobody cares for them. So thus, because Indians became poor, although they were having good qualities, they were morally upright, they had the Vedic culture, chanting and hearing the names of Krishna, Rama were not odd to them. They have been visiting temples and they had knowledge of scriptures, but still because they were poor, they were working very hard for economic development. And thus all these qualities became null and void. So poverty is also a big impediment in Krishna consciousness. But not the poverty which has been voluntarily taken to depend upon Krishna. So two kinds of people are poor. One, you can see Goswamis. Tyaktva tu namashesha mandalapati shrenim sada tuchhavat. Goswamis are also poverty stricken. They do not have even clothes for their body, just loin cloth, kantimala chanting beads. And they are living under a tree, different tree every night. They also have no wealth, but they were very wealthy, very wealthy. They had boatfuls of gold coins, but they left it because they wanted to completely depend upon Krishna and serve him. So this kind of poverty is very good. If a person takes for Krishna, sacrifices all one's wealth for Krishna. So it is a sacrifice, the anxiety which actually pleases Krishna, and our relationship is established. An entire spiritual revelation happens. Without anxiety, without sacrifice, we may finish entire Bhagavatam, but nothing would happen. No realization. So in the morning class, His Grace Amitasan Prabhu, beautifully he was explaining that how it is just a one line, one statement, I am not this body. But to realize this statement, it may take 5 years, 10 years, 20, 50 years, or even after that a person may not realize. So reading is quick, I am not the body. Memorizing is also quick and explaining is also quick. So many people will be able to read it, will be able to memorize it. Some people know all the shlokas of Bhagavad Gita, many shlokas of other scriptures, Bhagavatam, they would quote very profusely, quoting from this shloka, this canto, this chapter. They are very expert scholars. But as far as realization is concerned, they may still be on the material platform. So in order to have the realization, Krishna has to be pleased with the sincere service of the devotee. That is why it is told in the Vedas, Yagyarthat karmono anyatra loko yam karma bandhanaha. Yagya arthat karmanaha. All the action should be done simply for sacrifice. Materialist wants to enjoy the result of activities and the devotee wants to sacrifice everything for Krishna. And in this way, they try to remain in poverty. And such a poverty is very good. But poverty imposed by the laws of nature, that is very, very dangerous. And person keeps on working hard for economic development, never able to focus on Krishna consciousness. However, we should not imitate Goswamis. but at least majority of the wealth should be spent for Krishna. And ideally, we can hope one day we might be able to attain such platform of Goswamis, where eating, mating, sleeping, defending becomes zero, but we need not imitate it on our platform. So Prabhupada noticed too much absorption in politics or ignorance of the spiritual heritage or too crippled by poverty. These were the reasons because of which Indians were not taking Krishna consciousness. Therefore, he had not been successful. But in the United States, success had come. Clearly, America was the prime field for implanting Krishna consciousness. Yet, Prabhupada found the West uncultured and uncivilized. If a trace of civilization remained anywhere, he would often say it was in India, the heart of original Vedic culture. So, although Prabhupada now he understood Americans have qualification, but they are uncultured, uncivilized, and it is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's instruction, Bharat Bhumite Manushya Janma Yar Janma Sartha Kari Kar Paropkar. So, if a person has taken birth in India, his prime duty or her prime duty is to preach Krishna consciousness everywhere. So, sooner or later, Indians have to accept. So, preaching has to be done in India also. Although now, because of circumstantial arrangements, they are not able to pick it up. But Indians have the responsibility and Indians have to preach. Indians have special capacity to realize this message. And they have to go and preach. So Prabhupada then started focusing on India preaching as well. But India always had special attention of Prabhupada. Because the West, everything was happening very nicely by the management of his disciples, American disciples. But India, Prabhupada would tell half of the ISKCON's work and money would go in waste, simply because of immaturity of the disciples who were getting cheated by Indians. And when the Americans came to India, it was very, very difficult and embarrassing for them. There was so much cheating in India. At every step, every person is trying to make money. It was so difficult. And in America, yes, some cases are there, but not at every level. But here, at every step, a person is trying to con the other person, trying to cheat. And disciples were badly cheated, and half of the efforts were getting wasted simply because of this cheating. So, thus, Prabhupada told if anything has to happen systematically, it has to be done under my supervision. So Prabhupada did not appoint any GVC for India, but Prabhupada was personally governing, managing all the affairs himself. He saw how often and how easily the Indians were able to cheat his disciples. Half of the ISKCON work in India was being spoiled, he said, due to his disciples being cheated. If they put on a Pandal program, they might end up paying several times the standard cost. The only way for ISKCON to develop in India would be under Prabhupada's direct management. Beginning in 1970 with a small band of American disciples, Prabhupada had traveled from place to place in India as a model sannyasi, opening a great new field for ISKCON. Now he wanted to construct big temples in India, especially in three places: Mayapur, birthplace of Lord Chaitanya; Vrindavan, birthplace of Krishna; and Bombay, which was the commercial capital of the country. It still is the gateway to India. India's finance, culture, everything is decided from Bombay. It is the heart. So if preaching happens here nicely, then it would spread to everywhere. And with most of Prabhupada's big plans, even his close disciples couldn't fully comprehend the scope of his vision. But Prabhupada knew what he wanted, and he knew it all depended on Krishna. Gradually, he began to unfold his plans. Then Prabhupada finally comes to Bombay in November 1971. For a year, the devotees had been living in some apartments in around Malabar Hills, and some good houses also were there. So they were trying to find a big house to open a temple. But Prabhupada somehow or the other was not satisfied with those things. And eventually one day he was led to a property on Juhu Beach, a 5-acre property somebody was offering. When he got to know that the Hare Krishna movement, they want to have a center here, and huge land, 5 acres. But then the disciples were not able to understand that it is just a jungle over there and no proper facilities to live, no structure of any building. How shall we be able to do anything here? And Prabhupada was, however, he was able to understand Krishna's plan. Even before going to the West, Prabhupada came to this place and he had seen this land. when he was meeting various people, especially when he met Sumati Murarji, who sponsored Prabhupada's tickets going to the West, owner of India ship company. In her place, Prabhupada would give lectures on Bhagavatam. And thus Prabhupada had seen this place at that time also. And now when again Prabhupada got a proposal, so he thought it as a reminder from Krishna. And Prabhupada became very pleased, especially when he saw the beach, where many people would come in the morning time before they begin their daily jobs. And of course, some five-star hotels also were there. But yes, more or less it was jungle. Some tenements, buildings were there. But it was still on the outskirts. It was a village with a population of around 1,000 to 2,000 people. So it was still a village and jungle and very tall grasses and bushes. And disciples were not able to understand the handful of people here and how can we live in such a jungle and village kind of situation. However, Prabhupada was very much convinced we have to have this place. Prabhupada wanted the Juhu land, and although his disciples continued to show him houses in the Malabar hill, he didn't change his mind. His disciples wanted whatever he wanted, yet they had trouble developing enthusiasm for a property so far from the city and with no available housing or temple facility. Mr. N, the owner of 5-acre plot, had set a reasonable price and seemed friendly and sincere. Yet, risks were involved in such transactions. And in this case, Prabhupada even found reasons for suspicion. Through his lawyer, he got to know that this Mr. N had sold the same land to some other company, and this land was under litigation. So risk was there because people many times they cheat, especially in Mumbai, in such property issues. So Prabhupada encountered him. This litigation is going on. So he told, does not matter. They won't be able to win the case. And in any case, you don't make complete payment. Give me partial money. When the case is resolved with that company, then you settle the full amount. So even though risk was involved, but taking risk for Krishna is very good. Taking risk for material life is not at all good. So risk for Krishna, again, it gives anxiety to the devotee, and the devotee advances in spiritual life. Prabhupada and Mr. N agreed on a down payment of something, and there was verbal agreement that, okay, agreed. Srila Prabhupada was always one to think carefully over such business transactions. He had said that if businessman tells you, sir, for you I am making no profit, you should know that he is lying. And actually it is allowed. For a businessman, if he tells that I am making some profit, it would be difficult for him to sell. So when the businessman tells I am making no profit, I am selling you at cost price, such kind of statement could be a lie, and Prabhupada told you should understand that is a lie if businessman is telling that. But such kind of lie is allowed as per the Vedas. So in every occupation there is fault. For Kshatriya, killing is required, and if he is not trained in killing animals in jungle, he cannot kill real-time human beings in the war. So thus, even though killing is bad, but for Kshatriya, it is required such training. But to counteract such things, they are supposed to do yajnas every day. Similarly, merchant is allowed to tell lies. So in such a way, some kind of fault is there in all the ways. There is fault in every step. We are eating food, we are cooking food, bacteria are getting killed and other living entities. So that is also sin, that is also killing. But again, we have to do yajnas every day. So here, when we honor prasadam, we offer it to Krishna and we chant Hare Krishna Mahamantra, we get freedom from such unintentional sins. However, the faults are there at every step in our life. So Prabhupada told, you cannot believe a businessman if he tells I am not making any profit. You should be very cautious. Therefore, even in ISKCON's early days in New York City, when a real estate shark had posed as a well-wisher of the devotees, Prabhupada had been suspicious because Prabhupada himself was a businessman. He was knowing the mind. He had in fact cheated the devotees despite Prabhupada's warning to them. Now as then Prabhupada was suspicious, but he wanted the Juhu land and would take the risk. While devotees around the world delighted to hear Prabhupada's plan for Bombay Center, the local devotees got a little worried. Prabhupada, how will it happen? It is not possible to develop that land. Nor was it easy to envision the 5-star ISKCON hotel Prabhupada spoke of. If the devotees moved onto the land, they would have to erect temporary housing, maybe even a temporary temple, and the land was mosquito-ridden. So these mosquitoes are not to be found in America. And the land was mosquito-ridden and teeming with rats. You can just imagine a person who has no experience of flies, mosquitoes and rats. You find them in plenty and they have to live in such a place, in huts. Juhu was a small, almost isolated neighborhood without wealthy ISKCON supporters. Although Prabhupada predicted that Juhu would grow, at present it was only a village. To reside at Juhu would be a drastic contrast to the comfortable Akash Ganga building in downtown Bombay. Tamal Krishna explained to Prabhupada, "We are Westerners, we cannot live like this. We need doorknobs and running water." Prabhupada replied, "Don't you want to become purified?" When the Bombay devotees learned of Srila Prabhupada's response to Tamal Krishna, the words, "Don't you want to become purified?" went deep into their hearts. They knew that Prabhupada was asking them to become more austere and that it was for their ultimate benefit. They began to regard moving to Juhu as a formidable spiritual challenge rather than a drudgery. Developing the Juhu property was important to their spiritual master, and it was something greater and more wonderful than they at present realized. So thus this statement was sufficient of Srila Prabhupada to convince the devotees to move. Don't you want to become purified? So thus all the troubles that we take in Krishna consciousness, these are all purification. So one should never think that Krishna consciousness means the journey would be smooth. It will be smooth if you do not want to advance much. Krishna keeps his devotees comfortable. But the devotees voluntarily, there is no need to take such a big thing. Prabhupada would have taken a well-established bungalow in the Malabar Hills, which is a very good locality in Mumbai, and devotees could have started preaching. But Prabhupada had grand vision for spreading Krishna consciousness. And in a land infested with rats, mosquitoes, sometimes snakes also, and these American disciples, they have to live indoor without knobs, no running water, you take out from well or somehow you manage. Prabhupada told them it is important. So there would be some troubles in life, and please never think when we follow Krishna consciousness, there would be troubles in life, and all those troubles are great opportunities for advancing. That is purification of the heart. Only by purification of the heart, Krishna is revealed. We realize all the concepts which are written in the book. So thus, please, we should never think that, oh, I am following Krishna consciousness and I am falling into trouble. No, we should simply stick to the rules, regulations very nicely. And when such troubles at times they come, we should be very happy. This is an opportunity for my purification. So this was very important message, and disciples indeed realized, and the purification was very tough also. And we will see how the disciples were constantly leaving, not able to manage all such things. Still, Prabhupada was able to erect. There was a great fight, and eventually the temple came up. All these wonderful realizations we will try to understand tomorrow. So thank you so much for hearing.